Ever dreamed of having that perfect personal space? You know, a sanctuary you built with your own hands. Imagine dedicating yourself to that dream, only to discover that the process itself transforms not just the space, but your entire understanding of how we relate to the world around us. Our deep dive today unpacks the fascinating journey of Michael Pollan, chronicled in his book A Place of My Own, The Architecture of Daydreams. He set out, really, to build a simple writing hut. But what he found was this sprawling, surprising exploration of architecture, nature, culture, and, well, the very essence of human creativity.
It really is a compelling look at how abstract dreams get turned into, concrete drawings, and then into wood, stone, and glass, ultimately taking their place in the palpable world. We'll explore that often tense negotiation between the ideal and the practical, the abstract and the tangible, and what it truly means to infuse a creation with your own effort and intention.
Yeah, that intention piece feels key. So our mission for you, the listener, is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge from this incredible story, giving you a shortcut maybe to being well informed about the hidden meanings in the spaces we inhabit and create, and perhaps inspiring you to look at your own surroundings in a completely new light. So let's unpack this journey. Let's start at the very beginning with the profound why. What compelled Pollan to undertake this? I mean, it sounds like a monumental task, building his own hut.
Well, Pollan was nearing his 40th birthday, and he was experiencing this whirlwind of major life changes, becoming a father, leaving the city he'd lived in for years, starting this uncertain new career as a writer. Amidst all this new complexity, he felt this mounting insistence for a room of my own, but crucially, a room of my own making. He wanted to build it himself, seeking a kind of simplification from all the emotional and practical demands of his evolving life.
I mean, this isn't a new urge, is it? This idea of a private, dedicated space, it has a very rich history in human thought.
It certainly does. Pollan dug into Gaston Bachelard's The Poetics of Space,
Oh yeah, bachelors.
right, which argues that the house, particularly a private room within it, it shelters daydreaming. It protects the dreamer. It's almost a psychological necessity for cultivating the self. And, Virginia Woolf famously wrote about a room of one's own,
Of course.
emphasizing how a lock on the door grants that intellectual freedom to think for oneself, especially, as she noted, for a female writer.
So it's fundamentally about solitude then, interiority.
Exactly. But Pollan's vision really took it a significant step further than just like a quiet corner in a house.
How so?
Well, while Woolf and Bachelard focused on a room within a larger home, Pollan envisioned an entire building, an outpost of solitude completely separate, out in the wild landscape. This grand idea actually came as an offhand suggestion from his architect friend, Charlie Meyer, just a suggestion that, for Pollan, proved impossible to shake.
That makes me think of those classic primitive hut stories you find in literature. Did he draw on those?
He did, yeah. Think of narratives like Robinson Crusoe or Walden.
Right, Thoreau.
These stories, along with the architectural history of the first shelter, going way back to Vitruvius, they serve as these myths of origin. They explore humanity's fundamental relationship to nature and often offer critiques of modern society. Pollan's personal hut deeply echoes this enduring tradition.
Okay. And there was a key influence for him, a book that championed a very hands-on approach to building.
That's right. Tiny Houses by Lester Walker. It's essentially a pattern book filled with small, one-person structures, and it greatly resonated with Pollan. Walker's core message was profound. One of the great thrills in life is to inhabit a building that one has built oneself.
Wow.
He truly believed the meaning of such a place wasn't just in its existence, but in its making. A journey of self-discovery, connection to place that, just couldn't be delegated.
So this was way more than just a practical construction project for him. It was a deeply personal, almost philosophical quest. It's a powerful motivation. So having felt that profound, almost primal urge to create his own space, Pollan then faced the very real, and you said surprisingly complex, question of where. Where do you build it? You'd think choosing a site would be straightforward, maybe find a nice view, but Pollan found it was anything but.
Yeah, he discovered that the proper siting of houses was considered a kind of lost art by figures like Lewis Mumford. Mumford pointed out Americans' historical insensitivity to sight, partly maybe due to cheap energy allowing us to ignore climate.
Right, just heat or cool anything.
Exactly. And partly due to Thomas Jefferson's imposition of this rigid Cartesian grid over the nation's land, with little regard for natural topography.
Just straight lines everywhere.
Pretty much.
So how did Pollan, a writer, navigate this incredibly nuanced problem of finding the perfect spot? It sounds tricky.
He approached it with a fascinating mix of methods. He was like pacing walking patterns across the property, even setting a chair in different spots to literally rehearse inhabiting them.
Huh. Like trying it on.
Exactly. He realized he wasn't just looking for a physical view, but a point of view, a geographical correlative for his own shyness or self-assertion. It truly felt like choosing a site had become this metaphor for all his settling down decisions in life.
What's truly fascinating here is how he brought multiple, seemingly disparate perspectives to bear on the problem. It wasn't just about the physical land itself.
Exactly. He considered three distinct lenses, really, to evaluate his land. First, there was picturesque design. This is an 18th century English tradition, folks like Capability Brown.
Okay.
The approach aimed to improve the landscape by creating mystery. They'd tuck a building into a corner, partially obscured, just visible from the main house. Like an eye-catcher meant to pique curiosity without fully satisfying it.
Interesting. Keep you guessing.
Right. Second, he looked at feng shui, or geomancy.
Ah, feng shui.
Yeah, the ancient Chinese practice focused on qi, the earth spirit or cosmic breath that flows through the landscape. The goal is to find a site well supplied with qi, often where yin that's flatter, watery land forms, and yang upright, mountainous ones meet. And Pollan found his chosen spot stood right at the meeting point of forest and field, with a large boulder providing the yang to the clearing's yin.
That's specific.
Very. And third, he observed this surprising convergence. Pollan noticed that both picturesque designers and feng shui doctors would often recommend strikingly similar improvements to a landscape, things like curving paths or varied terrain, suggesting this deep, almost primal alignment between these artistic and mystical approaches.
So after all this multi-layered analysis, what kind of place did he actually choose for his hut? What felt right?
He chose a spot near a large boulder, with this delicate filtered light, nestled perfectly between the field and the wood. He found it offered a profound sense of refuge and an obliqueness that suited his personality. Even though Charlie, his architect friend, initially assumed it would face the open field. Ultimately, for Pollan, it felt like a place he found, rather than merely chose, a truth as solid and undeniable as the boulder itself.
Okay. So, site found. The focus shifts to design. And this is where that tension between words and the physical world really came to life for Pollan, especially being a writer.
Yeah, Pollan, accustomed to operating in the realm of language and theory, he was increasingly aware of information overload and, as he put it, the mud and slush of opinion. He yearned for the unwritten world of views, sounds, and smells. This realization was powerfully brought home by a quote from Hannah Arendt.
Oh.
She pointed out how rarely thinkers mention the sheer entertainment value of the world's appearances, a realm words really struggle to capture.
And his architect friend, Charlie, seemed to get that intuitively, didn't he? His approach to design was very different.
He did. Charlie, who frankly distrusted words.
Mm.
He responded to Pollan's abstract letter with a completely wordless, hand-bound booklet of photocopied photographs and drawings. Totally wordless. It was Charlie's way of forcing Pollan to choose. Are you talking about words, or what exactly?
That sounds fascinatingly mysterious. What was in this curious booklet?
It was this, bewildering collage. Tiny houses, bizarre blueprints, assembly manuals, hand tools, golden section diagrams showing that mystical 1 to 1.618 ratio you see everywhere, Parthenon, butterfly wings, seashells.
Right, the golden ratio.
Exactly. And a wide range of architectural photos, from broken down tobacco barns to a thatched roof with no walls, even a train sleeping compartment. Charlie later explained these images were meant to evoke pure architectural experiences and their sensual nature, bypassing verbal description entirely.
Wow. That really highlights a larger trend in modern architecture, doesn't it? Treating buildings almost like text to be read.
That's a key observation. Pollan realized that much contemporary architecture, especially movements like deconstructivism and postmodernism,
Which often prioritize concept over function, right?
precisely. They conceived of buildings as a language to be read, like words or sentences. Robert Venturi, for instance, famously called his buildings decorated sheds, implying the symbolic decorations or meanings mattered most, more than the raw structure.
So how did Charlie actually begin to translate this abstract, wordless inspiration into the physical design for the hut itself?
Well, he started on paper, focusing intently on the floor plan. He measured Pollan's wingspan for the desk, strategically added bookshelves, and used the golden section to determine the precise length of the building, an 8 by 13-foot rectangle. Charlie saw the golden section as a sort of bridge between architecture and nature, a universal proportion appearing in everything from trees to the human body. As he sketched, he would actually narrate a procession through the imaginary space, his drawing line both sure-footed and provisional.
It sounds like he really worked to tame the initial vision, maybe make it more grounded.
He absolutely did. His initial tower scheme for the hut was abandoned because he felt it lacked propriety for a simple hut nestled in the woods. He decided to impose some tighter rules, returning to that basic 8 by 13 rectangle. He was determined to condense all the elements Pollan wanted into that constrained but harmonious frame. He was aiming for a hut in the woods, not a second house.
Okay, makes sense. And the final blueprint, the design itself, had a very specific purpose for Pollan's work and his experience in the space, didn't it?
It did. The blueprint, which rather formally called the building a writing house, revealed foot-thick walls. These would function as bookshelves running the length of the building, flanked by pairs of sturdy 6 by 10 posts at either end. Large horizontal awning windows at the front and back were ingeniously designed to vanish into the ceiling when open.
Vanish.
Yeah, essentially transforming the entire building into a screened-in porch. And steps divided the lower work area from a raised landing, thoughtfully following the natural slope of the site, which created a feeling of the space gently lifting. This entire design aimed to provide both a strong sense of refuge, from the thick protective walls, and expansive prospect from the wide-open windows.
Refuge and prospect. Okay. So the ultimate goal here wasn't just a pretty drawing to be admired on paper.
Precisely. Pollan realized that, unlike purely literary buildings that exist primarily as ideas or symbols, Charlie's design was meant to be experienced, not just read. Its full story, its true meaning, would only be told in wood, not just on paper.
Okay, from those abstract drawings to the literal ground beneath their feet. The next step was laying the foundation. And this part of the process truly highlights that recurring clash between architectural ideals and, well, stubborn practical reality.
Yeah, it's where the rubber meets the road, or perhaps more accurately, where the concrete meets the earth. Historically, architects have had wildly differing views on how a building should meet the ground. Frank Lloyd Wright, for instance.
Right.
He believed houses should begin on the ground, not in it, using concrete slabs or plinths to kind of weld the structure to the land. He even disliked basements and attics, deeming them undemocratic.
Undemocratic, that's a strong word for a basement.
Yeah, implying they fostered social hierarchy by hiding service functions or separating living spaces.
Ah, okay. But European modernists like Le Corbusier had a completely opposite idea, didn't they?
They absolutely did. Le Corbusier famously placed his houses on slender pilates, or stilts.
Right, lifting them up.
Exactly, which visually lifted the building off the ground, symbolizing a break from traditional earthbound structures and creating open space beneath. He treated gravity almost as a curse. The house of the future, for him, was meant to be rootless and streamlined. Now, Charlie's initial, more rustic idea for Pollan's hut, with its simple rock footings, aimed for a comfortable, almost relaxed relationship with the ground. Though, as it turned out, it was so relaxed it might have needed a house jack to stay stable.
Chuckles slightly, oops. And then the unyielding reality of construction quickly set in, I imagine. The inspector arrives.
It did, with the arrival of the building inspector, Jenks,
Yeah.
and he took a very, very long view, thinking about 100-year storms in future generations.
Practical guy.
Very. He deemed Charlie's initial footing detail unacceptable, requiring pressure-treated wood where framing met the ground. Pollan quickly realized the ground doesn't want a comfortable relationship with buildings. It wants to heave and erode and decompose.
Always fighting back. And Pollan actually saw a stark physical example of nature reclaiming a poorly grounded structure nearby, right?
Yes, just steps from his site lay the collapsed ruins of a handyman's shack, just a sandwich of boards, slowly succumbing to water, rot, insects. This powerfully illustrated Pollan's observation that here, the local ground abhors the elements of there, the abstract geometry and manufactured goods of human construction. Here represented growth, decay, and ultimately death, always ready to reclaim what we impose upon it.
Wow. So what did the actual footings for his hut end up looking like, given all these conflicting forces?
They became surprisingly complex. 3.5 feet of concrete piers, steel rods, mortar, granite boulders, lug nuts, pressure-treated shoes. Hoisting those enormous boulders and lining them with tiny pins felt, as Pollan described it, like threading a 350-pound needle.
Sounds fiddly and heavy.
Yeah. This messy, often frustrating reality led Pollan to join Joe the carpenter in a good diatribe against the architectural profession.
I can imagine. It sounds like a constant negotiation between an ideal vision and the immutable facts of the world, often leaving you covered in mud and concrete. Okay, once that intricate foundation was finally set, it was time to raise the frame, the skeleton of the building. This is where Pollan really got his hands dirty and, it seems, learned a completely different kind of knowledge.
He certainly did. He discovered that gratuitous physical labor, which he initially wasn't particularly drawn to, yielded knowledge most readily to the hands. Unlike the more improvisational nature of gardening, building a house demanded precision, patience, and strict adherence to recipes.
And I imagine he learned a carpenter's most important axiom the hard way, given his background as a writer used to deleting things.
Absolutely. Measure twice, cut once.
A classic.
As a writer, Pollan was used to the luxury of undo typing commands, but as he quickly discovered, there's no undo sawing. The irreversibility of working with wood cultivates this profound sense of patience and deliberation, forcing you to mentally walk through all consequences before making a single cut.
That's a lesson. Now, the relationship between Charlie, the architect, and Joe, the carpenter, it sounds like it continued to be a central tension throughout this stage. How did Pollan navigate that?
It was a fascinating clash of philosophies, really. Joe had a deep devotion to wood and a corollary disdain for steel. He saw steel as the triumph of industry over craft. He firmly insisted on traditional mortise and tenon joints over Charlie's specified steel joist hangers.
Ah, the metal brackets.
Exactly. Joe was essentially reclaiming the authority of the old housewright, who once ruled the entire building process. Pollan often found himself caught between their differing prerogatives, sometimes even having to claim Charlie's suggestions as his own to avoid further friction with Joe.
Playing mediator, so it wasn't just personality, but a fundamental clash of building methods and traditions, too.
Precisely. They started with the rigor of post and beam construction, which Joe championed for its structural superiority and poetic economy. He argued it carried the treeness of the lumber directly into the building.
Creeness, I like that.
Yeah. But they eventually shifted to balloon framing. That's a 19th century innovation driven by steam sawmills and cheap nails. And this change was actually revolutionary for America.
How so? What was the big impact of balloon framing?
Well, it made building cheaper, faster, and remarkably easier, enabling, as they said, a man and a boy to do the work of 20 experienced carpenters. It literally allowed for the rapid settlement of the Great Plains, where large timber was scarce, by making materials easily transportable. And more profoundly, it fostered individualism and architectural originality. It freed builders from the rigid syntax of traditional timber framing to create more flexible, open American houses, less like sturdy boxes and more like balloons capable of expanding.
That's a powerful shift in how people could build and live. And the completion of the frame was marked by a deeply symbolic ritual, wasn't it? The topping out.
It was the topping out ceremony, a ritual with ancient, even pagan roots. Traditionally, after raising the ridgepole, carpenters would pound the frame, and the master builder would bring a young conifer to fix to the highest beam. This symbolized the building taking on the life of a living tree, meant to ensure a long and prosperous life for the structure and its owner.
And this ritual clearly took on a much deeper, almost philosophical meaning for Pollan himself, didn't it?
For Pollan, powerfully highlighted the tragic sense of human creation, that what we desire for our happiness often comes at a heavy cost. He felt both shame at cutting down these venerable fir trees for the lumber, and exultation thinking, look at what our hands have made.
Ah.
The ceremony became this profound way for him to reconcile the simultaneous shame and nobility of building, reminding him of the gift of the firs and the indelible mark he was making on the land. In his words, it completed the symbol of our humanity, the gable crowning the square.
The gable crowning the square. Wow. Okay, so with the skeleton of the building now standing proud, the next crucial stage was the roof. This seemingly practical task led to surprising reflections on architectural theory and our fundamental relationship with nature, didn't it?
It really did. Modernist architecture, with its rallying cry of starting from zero, aggressively sought to banish the traditional gable roof. They saw it as a symbol of everything musty and old.
Throw it out.
Exactly. They aimed for a house machine that was unhaunted by the past, eliminating attics and basements where, as they saw it, ghosts of our past reside.
Yeah.
But Gaston Bachelard, remember him? He powerfully argued that people cannot dream in a geometric cube.
Right, you need the angles, the nooks. But gables made a surprising comeback in architecture, didn't they? It sounds like an act of rebellion almost.
They absolutely did, largely thanks to Robert Venturi's Vanna Venturi house in 1964. It featured this gigantic, emphatically traditional gable.
You're really leaning into it.
Totally. This was a taboo contravention that directly sparked architecture's postmodern revolution, where buildings became more like signs or language referring to other architectural forms rather than strictly functional structures.
Yet for Pollan building in New England, the practical reality of a roof designed for that climate must have been undeniable regardless of architectural theory. Snow, rain.
That's absolutely right. Pollan found his own roof, which was twice as steep as Venturi's, was a hands-on lesson in undeniable practical realities like gravity and weather. Following the precise counsel of the Cedar Bureau, yes, there's the Cedar Bureau,
Of course there is.
he learned that superior stability and weather resistance for a roof were non-negotiable in that climate. He realized that a pitched roof is simply more natural in certain climates because it works best at keeping out rain and snow. As architect Lloyd Kahn observed about 90-degree walls, and by extension humans standing upright, we are 90 degrees to the earth. Our roofs should reflect that gravity.
Makes sense. And what about the windows? These were apparently a huge point of contention between Charlie and Joe.
They were, oh boy. Charlie insisted on custom prescription windows, these in-swinging awning windows designed specifically to make the walls vanish in summer, truly transforming the building into a screened-in porch. He called them your building's face, Mike, your face in your frame.
High stakes for windows.
Yeah. But Joe, the carpenter, and the mill worker, Tude Tanguay, they saw them as cartoons and ate ones. Impractical, expensive, and notoriously prone to leaking. Like the famous leaky roofs of modernist icons such as Frank Lloyd Wright's Falling Water or Peter Eisenman's House the Sixth.
Right, the Achilles heel of some famous designs. So how did they manage to make these contentious windows actually work? Sounds like a challenge.
It required true collaboration. Jim Evangelisti, a skilled craftsman, found inspiration in old green and green designs for drip edges. It was this fusion between the neo, Charlie's avant-garde vision, and the traditional, Jim's practical craft, to solve the very real problem of keeping the water out.
Nice bit of teamwork. And the windows themselves, Pollan discovered, told a fascinating story about how our relationship with nature has changed over time.
Yeah, historically, colonial windows were quite small, reflecting a view of the outdoors as a howling wilderness, a profane place.
Keep it out.
Right. Refuge mattered more than prospect. But with the Enlightenment, nature became idealized as a spiritual sanctuary, and transparency became an ideal, leading to much larger windows. However, modernist glass houses, while visually transparent, often proved alienating. They created social barriers, failed to engage the other senses, and offered this static, distant, almost movie-like view of the world.
Interesting. So how did Pollan's own custom windows ultimately affect his perception of the world from inside his hut? Did they work for him?
It's quite profound, actually. Instead of one panoramic view, his desk now looked out onto 6 discrete square frames, creating this shifting mosaic that taught him to see more intricately, appreciating nature's unspectaculars, ordinary near-distance imagery he might otherwise have overlooked.
Seeing the small things.
Exactly. He realized the building offered both refuge, that feeling of safety and enclosure from the thick walls, and prospect and expansive, open view from the thin, glazed walls. His body responded viscerally to the space, sensing subtle changes in air, temperature, acoustics. He concluded that space speaks to us, not in a literary or semiological way like reading a text, but more like a wood duck, responding instinctively to its natural environment.
The wood duck.
Yeah, like Charlie had designed a wood duck house nearby, specifically to evoke a natural habitat for the ducks, and this leads to a powerful idea. Architecture, in this sense, is not merely arbitrary cultural convention. Like that wood duck house, forms like load-bearing columns, right angles, pitched roofs. These are deep patterns that survive because they have proven to reconcile human needs, natural laws, and the human body. It's a process more akin to evolution than language. What do you think about that idea? That buildings are almost organically fitted to us?
That's a profound thought. Yeah, it makes you reconsider every roof and wall you've ever seen, doesn't it? Like they evolved with us. Okay, so finally, after all the major structural work, came the finishing touches, the details that truly transform a structure into a lived-in space. You'd think this would be the home stretch, but it's rarely that simple, is it? Finish work takes time.
Not at all. And the term finish work itself has that double meaning. Temporal, meaning nearly finished, and spatial, referring to an exalted refinement of interior wood. It's incredibly time-consuming. Modernists, interestingly, famously tried to inoculate their buildings against time.
Inoculate?
Yeah, attempting to sever ties to history and prevent the marks of inhabitation. They designed every detail, from built-ins to teapots, for this abstract man rather than for specific individuals. This is often why many modernist interiors look their best uninhabited. And architects sometimes avoid revisiting their completed works, finding it too discouraging to see them actually lived in.
Wow. And Pollan's choice of wood for his writing desk itself illustrates how much cultural freight even a material can carry, beyond its purely functional
It
properties.
absolutely did. Charlie initially specified white pine, which Joe, the carpenter, immediately dismissed as too soft. Might as well use balsa, I think he said.
Chuckles, right.
Pollan then explored options like maple, cherry, oak, each carrying distinct cultural associations. He ultimately chose ash, which was hard-wearing and had a vivid grain, and he oiled it to bring out its warm, rippled hue, reminiscent of beach sand. It was a deeply personal choice.
And what about the metaphysics of trim? That sounds like a wonderfully specific, slightly nerdy point.
It is. Trim, those decorative moldings that cover seams, they can either hide poor craftsmanship or proclaim fine work. Modernists, striving for objectivity and machine-like perfection, often disdained it.
Too fussy.
Exactly. But in reality, achieving truly trimless joints is prohibitively expensive.
Mm.
Even iconic modernists like Mies van der Rohe had to use decorative trim, like the I-beams on the Seagram building, when structural elements were hidden by building codes.
Ah, function following form.
Right.
Or code.
Right. Pollan's building had minimal trim, and Charlie even allowed for holidays, a euphemism for errors, quoting Ruskin, who defended craftsmen's imperfection against the inhumanity of the machine. Joe, of course, had his own colorful take on Charlie's holidays, famously calling the building a fucking Mardi Gras because of all the supposed imperfections.
That certainly adds a dose of reality. But the deeper significance of interior finishes, particularly wood, really surprised Pollan, didn't it? The history behind it.
It did. He discovered that studies in libraries are traditionally finished in wood because the study itself evolved from a specific piece of bedroom furniture, the writing desk in the Renaissance. This locked compartment was actually the first truly private space in the West, intrinsically tied to the emergence of the modern self and literary culture. Things like silent reading, keeping diaries, writing personal essays like Montaigne's.
Wow, so the room echoes the desk.
Exactly. As Winston Churchill famously said, first we shape our buildings and thereafter our buildings shape us. Our spaces hold historical memory, even if we've consciously forgotten it.
That's powerful. And finally, after all the physical and philosophical work, came the moment of inhabitation itself, moving in.
Yes. After the electricians wired the building, which Joe noted was not normal construction due to its exposed structure, Pollan began moving in his books. As he shelved them, the walls literally thickened, and the room grew warmer and more inviting. He saw his building for the first time all lit up, a warm-looking, wide-awake envelope of light set down in the middle of the darkening woods, which he described as a luminous fact ordering the shadowy landscape.
A luminous fact. It sounds like the building truly took on a life of its own then, becoming more than just a structure.
It absolutely did. He felt it was a new fact in my life, wondering how it might come to shape him in return. He came to see it as a kind of wheelhouse, journeying somewhere, signifying that ongoing reciprocal relationship between creator and creation.
What a journey. This deep dive into the building of a simple writing hut has taken us on an incredible trip, really. From a personal dream to concrete reality, showing us how deeply intertwined architecture, nature, culture, and our very selves truly are.
We've really seen that building is a visceral sensory experience, hasn't it? A profound form of knowledge gained not just through abstract thought, but directly through the body, through the feel of wood, the sound of rain on a roof, the focused effort of a swinging hammer. And that the language of architecture is often rooted in these practical realities and maybe evolutionary fitness, not just arbitrary signs or fleeting trends.
Yeah, that evolutionary idea sticks with you. We also explored that constant, messy, but ultimately vital tension between the ideal and the practical, between an architect's grand vision and the unyielding facts of the ground, the weather, the materials themselves. It's a testament to the complicated but ultimately deeply rewarding process of bringing something truly meaningful into being.
And Pollan learned that while he traded some old frames of reference for new ones, the entire process allowed him to see the world freshly, scrupulously, and from more than one point of view, a profound shift in perception.
That's the real payoff, perhaps. So as you reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider your own spaces, whether it's a favorite room, a garden you tend, or even a virtual environment you design online. What stories do they tell about you, and what hidden meanings might they hold? How do the things you create, big or small, come to shape you in return, and what is the cost you're willing to acknowledge, be it time, effort, resources, or even just a shifting perspective in bringing your own dreams, large or small, into tangible existence?